नमस्कार। भारतीय पुनर्वास परिषद के नवशिखर चैनल पर आपका स्वागत है। मैं हूं अमित शर्मा। दोस्तों, मुसीबतें जिंदगी में किसी के सामने कभी भी आ सकती हैं, लेकिन ऐसे में अगर अपने दोस्तों, अपने माता पिता, अपने साथ में रहने वाले और अगर उस समस्या से जुड़े हुए किसी एक्सपर्ट की एक प्रॉपर गाइडेंस अगर हमें मिल जाए तो ऐसी समस्याओं से निकलना, उससे पास होना, उससे ओवरकम करना हमारे लिए काफ़ी आसान हो जाता है। आप समझ गए होंगे हम इशारा कर रहे हैं काउंसलिंग की तरफ। काउंसलिंग किसी व्यक्ति की जिंदगी में कितना अहम रोल अदा कर सकती है, इस बात को हम इस बात से भी समझ सकते हैं कि आज अदालतें भी बहुत सारे मामलों पर जो वादी होते हैं, परिवादी होते हैं, उनकी काउंसलिंग करने की सलाह देती है। ऐसे में जबकि काउंसलिंग का महत्व आज की जिंदगी में लगातार बढ़ता जा रहा है, आज हम इस बात को समझने की कोशिश करेंगे कि ये काउंसलिंग हमारे डिसेबल पर्सन को किस तरह से हेल्प कर सकती है, किस तरह से उनके पेरेंट्स को इस प्रॉब्लम को समझने में और किस तरह से आगे स्टेप लिया जाए, किस तरह से इस प्रॉब्लम को इस तरह से टैकल किया जाए कि जो प्रॉब्लम है उससे व्यक्ति ओवरकम करते हुए अपनी ज़िंदगी में ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंट, ज़्यादा इंडिपेंडेंट बन सके। इस बात पर आज हमारा फोकस रहेगा। इसके लिए आज हमने एक स्पेशल टॉपिक चुना है। आज हमारा टॉपिक है अप्रोचेस एंड टेक्निक्स ऑफ गाइडेंस एंड काउंसलिंग विद रेफरेंस टू वेरियस काइंड्स ऑफ डिसेबिलिटीज। और इस सब्जेक्ट पर अपनी एक्सपर्ट नॉलेज के साथ में आज हमारे साथ हैं डॉक्टर SP जेना। डॉक्टर जेना, आपका स्वागत है हमारे कार्यक्रम में। दोस्तों, हमारे एक्सपर्ट इस सब्जेक्ट पर काफ़ी अच्छी नॉलेज रखते हैं। आप चाहें तो पूरे कार्यक्रम के दौरान हमारे एक्सपर्ट से कोई सलाह, कोई सुझाव, अपने कोई सवाल पूछ सकते हैं। हमारे एक्सपर्ट आपके सवालों के जवाब देंगे। आप उनसे कांटेक्ट करने के लिए आप हमारे टोल फ्री नंबर्स पर हमसे कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। आप हमारे कांटेक्ट नंबर्स को नोट करें। हमारा टोल फ्री नंबर है 1800-11-2008। हमारा फ़ोन नंबर 011-265-11613 और हमारा फैक्स नंबर 011-265-11609। इसके अलावा अगर आप ईमेल के थ्रू हमारे एक्सपर्ट से कांटेक्ट करना चाहें, आप हमारी ईमेल आईडी नोट करें। हमारी ईमेल आईडी है rehabstd@ndc.vsnl.net.in और हमारी वेबसाइट www.rehabcouncil.nic.in। आइए चर्चा की शुरुआत करते हैं। डॉक्टर जीना, सबसे पहले ये हम समझना चाहते हैं कि काउंसलिंग होती क्या है। हम प्रॉपर सलाह अपनी कॉमन जिंदगी में छोटी सी भी बात होती है तो हम अपने दोस्तों के साथ में, अपने माता पिता के साथ में, बच्चे को कोई प्रॉब्लम आती है सीधे अपने माँ बाप के पास पहुंच जाता है कि हमको क्या करना चाहिए, कैसे करें। तो काउंसलिंग जो एक स्पेसिफिक जो हम एजुकेशन के सेंस में है, जो हम टर्म यूज कर रहे हैं, इसका क्या महत्व है, इसका मतलब क्या है?
हाँ, हमारे जिंदगी में हम रोज कुछ ना कुछ समस्या फेस करते रहते हैं, राइट। किसी को कुछ समस्या है, कोशिश करता है खुद उस समस्या को कम करने के लिए, कोशिश करता है कि अपने अंदर जो क्षमताएं हैं इस क्षमता को पूरा उपयोग करके उस समस्या को समाधान करने के लिए। कभी कभी लोग कोशिश करते हैं उनका भाई बहन दूसरे लोगों के साथ बात करके उस समस्या को समाधान करने के लिए, लेकिन हर समस्या एक जैसे नहीं होता है। कुछ समस्या ऐसे होते हैं कि इसके लिए आसपास में जो लोग होते हैं इस समस्या का समाधान कर नहीं पाते हैं, क्योंकि इस समस्या को समझने की जरूरत होता है। और हमारे पास जो क्षमताएं हैं, हमारे पास जो एबिलिटीज है, वो एबिलिटीज उसके लिए सफिशिएंट नहीं हो पाता है। इसलिए जरूरत होता है कि जो आदमी समस्या को सही ढंग से समझ सके, सही ढंग से इसका हल कर सके, इसके साथ बात करने की जरूरत होता है। सो पर्सन हु इज well qualified, well trained will be able to understand the problem in a better way. So people go to talk to that individual, try to discuss the problem, and the trained person tries to solve these problems. ऐसे जैसे कि एक father talks to a son and he tries to give a lot of solutions to the problem. But sometimes this doesn't happen in a very natural way, although we believe that counseling takes place in day-to-day life in a very natural manner. It requires some kind of scientific intervention, some kind of scientific understanding, so that the problem can be solved in a better way. And counseling process has been defined in a number of ways. number of ways we can define what counseling is. One of them is that counseling is a process in which the counselor or the therapist helps an individual or a group of individuals to understand the causes for their problems and guides through the process of learning to make good life decisions. In the life you have to take a lot of decisions and you need a lot of guidance for this decision. It is a process. It has significant steps through which you have to proceed and you have to solve the problems. Either you can conduct counseling program for the individuals, or this counseling program can be conducted for the whole group, a group of people who suffer from some kind of problems. They can be dealt by counseling. At times you find people, many people having a similar kind of problems. You can put them together, you can bring them together to talk, to discuss, to express the problems and give some solutions to these problems. Now it is a process of learning. Counseling doesn't take place in one setting. You need to sit for a number of settings to understand what exactly the problem is.
It can be a continuous process.
It can be a continuous process.
Yeah.
Because individual has a limited understanding about oneself.
Yeah.
We fail to understand ourselves fully until unless somebody tells you that what deficits you have, what plus points you have, what abilities you have, and counselor plays that crucial and important role. That is why we need to take the help of a counselor to solve these problems. Definitions are many. There are a number of definitions regarding counseling. You may also consider counseling as an activity designed primarily to work with people who are experiencing developmental problems and problems of adjustment. Counseling is focused mostly on developmental problems and also problems of adjustment. When problems are of more difficult nature, for instance, somebody is suffering from some kind of disorder, disease, then we don't call it a counseling program. We call it psychotherapy. For instance, in a situation where a person just needs information, we say it is guidance. Guidance is given, a person is told that okay, you do few things, the problem will be over. Sometimes we lack information. Information can be given by a person who gives guidance, and that becomes sufficient to take a decision, life decision, or decision in a specific situation and solve the problem. So there are different types of situation in which we require different types of counseling. Counseling has to be defined, has to be understood from these angles. That is why there are multiple numbers of answers to this problem, multiple types of definitions of counseling, and it is guided by the kind of counseling that you are going to give to an individual. A child who is suffering from developmental disability and a mother has to deal with this child require a different kind of counseling than a person who has got difficulty in coping with academic problems. The problems are different, counseling methods are different, understanding is different. However, we have to go through certain processes through which we can conduct this counseling program. Now, the basic purpose of conducting counseling is to promote trust, safety, and lasting change, whether it is in the individual, in the family, or in the group. One has to promote trust. Trust is one of the cornerstone of understanding people. The people have to understand each other to give some solutions. If you do not have a good understanding, if you don't have good trust, then we cannot solve the problems adequately. Because trust is the basis on which person communicates to you, talks about his difficulties, her difficulties, and try to understand, try to feel that this person is going to help me if I talk about my problems.
If the person would not trust you, then he will not explain all his problems to you. Yeah.
Exactly. Because we need trust is a basic element in all kinds of communicative processes. This is one of the fundamental, the cornerstone for human relations. Therefore, we have to have a trusting relationship. Now, how trust can be developed? Trust can be developed not only by people's understanding about other people, but also by looking at an individual's experience, individual's expertise, training, and all these things. So when you are going for counseling, when you are sending a parent for counseling, the parents would understand the individual is capable of giving counseling. The individual has got adequate training for giving this kind of, offering this kind of services.
He has expert knowledge in the subject.
Yeah, And this trust varies from time to time. In the first session, if a parent doesn't get adequate information, adequate understanding of his or her problem, then he may not have that amount of stress, that amount of the trust on the individual, on the counselor. And it may happen that after few sessions, the individual who seeks counseling may drop out. So trust is one of the basic issues which has to be dealt very carefully by a counselor. That is why expert knowledge is very important in this field. Nowadays, the counselors are accredited. They are given certificates that they can conduct counseling, on the basis of which they carry out this kind of activity in day-to-day life. Now, as far as the nature of counseling is concerned, counseling is determined by the target population, the population which you are going to address, whether he is a mentally handicapped, mentally challenged, or a learning disabled, or a person who is suffering from hearing handicap, or a person who has got other difficulties. So it is determined by the population that you are going to deal with. Secondly, time and setting is important. Sometimes we do not have adequate time to address to certain problems. We cluster the program. We try to focus on few issues in one setting, then we go on to the next setting if time doesn't permit us. So time is a very important issue. Setting, there are some setting in which counseling can occur in a better way than other settings. So setting has to be prepared in such a way that the person will feel comfortable to sit, talk, share experiences. It requires a lot of privacy. It requires a lot of understanding of the individual. So a situation has to be created in such a manner that the individual will be in a position to talk about his problems. Where the privacy is lacking, the individual doesn't have a privacy, always has a feeling that somebody may listen to us, this may be communicated to somebody else.
Matter would be disclosed.
Yes. Disclosed confidentially.
Yeah.
It will be less.
Yeah.
In that case, person will not be very comfortable
Yeah.
to talk.
Yeah.
But if you are forcing him to talk and get counseled, he may be giving or she may be giving very superficial information which is not going to help the individual. He will protect himself from any kind of psychological injuries which would be occurring, which would be caused because of lack of privacy. Nobody wants to reveal about his own internal matters to anybody else unless there is a trust. So trust, as you said, trust is a very important issue which is to be dealt very carefully in counseling situations. Now, different counselors have got different kinds of approaches, different kinds of orientation. Some people are behaviorally oriented, some people are analytically oriented, and some people are more humanistically oriented. So their counseling methods differ depending on the kind of orientation training they have. Therefore, it becomes sometimes difficult to define what counseling is. Counseling is defined by the kind of approach a counselor has. So we talk about client-centered counseling, we talk about analytically oriented counseling, we talk about different various types of humanistic counseling, so different kind of counseling. Sometimes counseling is defined by the problem that you face, like counseling for the deaf, counseling for the mentally handicapped, depending on the population that you are going to deal with. So at large, we believe that there should be a proper understanding between the counselee and the counselor. Counselor is one who gives counseling, and the counselor is one who receives the counseling. The sender and the receiver, there should be a synchronicity between them, so that the understanding will be better and counseling will be received. No matter whatever you talk to an individual, whatever you advice you give to the individual may not accept it until unless he has trust, until unless he understands that the problem is understood. You can pull the horse to the water, but you cannot make him drink the water.
Yeah.
So this is the situation. Therefore, it is not just like two people talking to each other, but it is a question of understanding, which is a key issue that we are dealing with. Now, understanding occurs when people know about the psychological mechanism involved in a particular dynamics involved in a particular problem. For instance, a person who has got fixated at certain level of development, he becomes childish. The behavior becomes more childlike. Although he is an adult, the behavior is childlike. If a counselor has an understanding of the developmental sequences, psychosexual development of the individual, he can understand that probably this person has been fixated somewhere in the early stage of life. That is why he is not able to reconcile, he is not able to understand the real problem that a person is facing in day-to-day life. A smoker who is smoking a lot may be having a fixation at an early stage of life because of that, and he's fixated at an oral stage, and he's always concerned about that unconsciously. What a individual talks about himself or herself may not be true also. Sometimes if the counselor is not trained enough, he may make a mistake in understanding the individual as per what he says at a surface level. Therefore, a person has to be very careful in deciphering what is being told. Now, people try to understand the body language during counseling. Different people have different kind of body language when they make communication. Some are defensive, they make a defensive posture, they are not open. This could be understood not only by speaking to them, but also by looking at their body language. When a person is not comfortable, the person is not able to disclose few things, there are some kind of resistances. This can be seen in terms of in the form of repetitions, some kind of reservations, coughing, not talking fluently. These are some of the indications by which you can make out the person is resistive, is not talking about what he wants to communicate. A trained counselor need to help the client to overcome these resistances. He should sense the pulse of the client. He should understand that the client is hiding something. Maybe that situation itself is not sufficient to deal with this problem, and one may have to take another session in which he may be feeling better. Now, as far as disability is concerned, our major concern is disability. Now, when a child is born with disability, parents do develop some kind of experience of shock. May not be knowing also. There are some disabilities which are quite conspicuous. Physical disabilities are quite conspicuous. Mental disabilities are not so much conspicuous. Hearing handicap is not so much conspicuous until unless you conduct a assessment of the child. Till that time, the parent fails to understand what happens to the child, why this child is different from other children. But the moment the child is detected that he is suffering from some kind of disability, some kind of handicap, a kind of stress, a kind of trauma occurs. This kind of shocking experience becomes a lifelong experience for the parents until unless they are properly dealt with. Because of this trauma, not only that the parents are disturbed, they fail to deliver the required services, rehabilitation services to the child who suffers from these disabilities. The person remains fixated with this particular experience. She cannot go forward from here because there is a fixation. The person feels very much shocked because of this experience. The therapist tries to help him to come out of his shocking experience and take life as it is, understand life as it is, and should prepare himself to deal with the problems that he is facing in day-to-day life. How to improve the adaptive skills of the individual, how to help him to come out of his problems, the handicapped child. So these are some of the issues which can be advised to the parent. Now, giving advice doesn't mean that the parent will be accepting the advice. The parent has to be explained, has to be demonstrated, and it becomes, when you demonstrate, explain, it becomes much more easier for the individual to accept than if you simply talk. So talking alone doesn't help always. There are children who need counseling. They are very reserved, they don't interact. A child with, for instance, with learning disability, he has a lot of difficulty in the class. He is not able to cope with the class. He is not able to cope with his friends. He is bullied, and sometimes he is beaten very badly. He is misbehaved, he is badly treated, and this becomes one of the major trauma, the trauma that builds up in his day-to-day life and is able to overcome. And because of this trauma which builds up in his life, day-to-day life, he is not able to concentrate in his studies. A trained counselor would like to relieve him from this trauma by exposing him to different kind of activities: drawing, painting, speaking, listening to stories, talking,
Any creative
activities.
Yeah.
So that will help him to cathect. Cathect means investing our psychological energy on something. You are writing means you are cathecting your psychological energy, investing psychological energy on something. If you don't cathect, you may have to focus on things which are unimportant. This child may be cathecting himself or herself only on studies and finding himself to be in a very odd position because he doesn't perform well in mathematics, in Sanskrit or in other languages. Reading, writing, arithmetic difficulties are there, and he's quite fixated on those problems. The trained counselor or seasoned counselor try to bring him out from that, that kind of fixation, and help him to concentrate on a number of other activities through which he can develop his own self. We talk about self-actualization. We talk about humanistic approach. The person should be able to understand oneself in a better perspective. Instead of understanding oneself as a poor performer, he can understand himself as a good performer in other fields of life, other spheres of life. And that will be great for the child to establish a better self-concept. And a better self-concept, enhanced self-concept can take you anywhere. He can perform well in many other subjects, many other aspects of life. One has to make him understand that this is not the life doesn't end here. Doing mathematics, doing physics, or reading, writing.
This is not the whole life.
It's not the whole life. You have to consider many other aspects of life. Many parents are there who nag the child, try to see that the child improves. But nagging does have a lot of impact on other aspects of life. We call it a spillover effect.
Yeah.
A punishment is given, nagging is given for one aspect of his performance, maybe mathematics, that may affect other aspects of his behavior. For instance, he is not able to concentrate because he is being beaten up by the child, by the parent, or in the school he has been badly misbehaved. He has been rebuked. He has been scolded. So this punishment which occurs in the school, in home setting, that gets transferred to other settings of life, social life and other lives. The parents should understand that one should give punishment is necessary in day-to-day life, I believe, because it talks about it gives you a glimpse of reality principle. In the reality, in day-to-day life, we experience pain and we try to get rid of pain and learn new behaviors. A child while walking, when falls down, he gets pain. To avoid pain, he stands erect and starts correcting his posture. But this is a part of life. So we do not say that punishment should be completely avoided, but punishment should be given very little so that it will not harm the individual. It will help the individual to grow, to correct himself. So feedback is very important in day-to-day life. The child should be given good feedback. Sometimes because of their own stresses, parents forget to reinforce children in their day-to-day life. Counseling has to be given in such a way that they understand how to reinforce, how to punish even in a very milder way, and see that the child grows. The growth process will continue, and this will continue if we have proper contingencies to manage this growth process. So precisely speaking, counseling has different kind of approaches. Depending on the approach, the counseling process has to be modified, has to operate. Now, as you know that while counseling, we need to focus on number of behaviors. Behavior is multifaceted. We talk about multidimensionality of behavior, such as feelings, thoughts, behavior. Not only that, the past and the present of the individual. When I say that it is one has to focus on the feelings, thoughts and behaviors, I am talking about the individual in its totality. Behavior alone doesn't reflect an individual's mentality, what he thinks, how he feels. When a counselor looks into all these aspects, for instance, punishing a child, right? How he feels, how he takes it is important. Punishment as such is not important. How an individual takes it. He says, no, don't do this. That itself is a punishment, milder form of punishment. And the child takes it in a sportive manner. Yes, I won't do this. Another child may say, why my teacher told me like this? And this why and how is sometimes explained by the kind of upbringing the child has. If a child is never punished, little punishment will hurt him. If a child is reinforced always, little punishment will hurt him also. And a child who has been given a lot of reinforcement at home, and you give a small reinforcement, he will not consider this as a reinforcement. These comparative aspects are to be understood, to be explained to the parents, so that they can provide a better environment for the child to grow. This is another aspect of counseling. Now, past and present is important. We not only live in present, but also live in our past. Many people remain in their past only, they don't remain in present. They keep on thinking, brooding over things that has happened some 10 years back, 5 years back, 7 years back. Depending on the trauma, depending on the kind of situation they faced, they respond. Some people don't come out from that experience, if it is a traumatic experience. A child has been beaten very badly. A mental handicap, there are many schools where the children with mental retardation are not properly screened. They go to general schools, regular schools. The child doesn't perform well in the school. Many times the teachers used to beat him, punish him. That becomes a trauma for the child. The child remains fixated with that trauma and do not grow at all. So one has to understand the life history of the individual, the kind of experiences an individual has in his lifetime, to give a better counseling. So past, present and future have their own importance. We are now focusing on the steps which are involved in counseling, and different authors have explained these steps in different ways. I have just tried to take the description which is being given by Kotler and Shepard. Now, they have said that counseling is a process that is involved in the following steps. It involves the following steps. Number one is helping people to articulate why they are seeking help. Many people do not know what kind of help they require. They say, okay, we have some difficulties, you solve the problem. But help is needed for what kind of things they do not understand. Counsel is one, while discussing with the individual, try to explain what kind of help he can give and what kind of help he cannot give and what kind of help they really require. A person with a parent with a handicapped child comes and says that, look, he is not walking at all, what to do about it? So should I purchase a crutch for him? Should I purchase some kind of appliances, some kind of things, so that he can take it as support and walk? He doesn't know, she doesn't know that what kind of help can help this child to walk. Now the counselor will try to find out what kind of help the child really requires. He calls the child and asks him to stand.
और यही किसी काउंसलर की सबसे बड़ी इम्पोर्टेंस है, सबसे बड़ी भूमिका उसकी यही हो सकती है कि पहले वो समझे कि जो कैंडिडेट हमारे पास काउंसलिंग के लिए है उसकी ज़रूरत क्या है, उसको चाहिए क्या। यहाँ पर हम अपने ऑडियंस से इस बात को कहना चाहेंगे कि हमारे एक्सपर्ट डॉक्टर जीना इस चीज़ को बता रहे हैं और इस चीज़ को बहुत ज़्यादा समझने की ज़रूरत है कि सलाह तो कोई भी दे सकता है, किसी भी तरह के गाइडेंस हम प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं, लेकिन एज एन एक्सपर्ट, एक एक्सपर्ट होने के नाते सबसे पहले ये जानना ज़रूरी है कि जो सलाह उसको दी जानी है, जो काउंसलिंग उसको दी जानी है, तो उसमें चाहिए क्या, उसकी ज़रूरत क्या है। और हम इस बात को और समझने की कोशिश करेंगे। अभी हम एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेते हैं।
This is Aparna. She loves chess and Shah Rukh Khan. Her best friend is Swati. She also has visual impairment.
La 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 la.
This is Neeraj.
La la हवा धीरे धीरे चल रही.
He plays many instruments.
सुनो जो कहानी
He loves Mohammed Rafi and cricket.
ये कहानी सदियों पुरानी है. ये कहानी हमें सुना.
He also uses crutches for mobility.
धीरे धीरे.
चंदा है तू मेरा सूरज है तू.
This is Raj Bala.
मेरी आँखों का तारा है तू. जीती हूँ मैं बस तुझे देख कर.
With her husband and daughter. She loves cooking and watching TV.
सूरज है तू. आ मेरी आँखों का तारा है तू.
She also has cerebral palsy. Look beyond the disability. Look at the person.
वेलकम बैक फ्रेंड्स। अभी आपने देखा कि काउंसलिंग के बारे में हमारे एक्सपर्ट डॉक्टर जीना इस चीज़ को बता रहे हैं कि काउंसलिंग कितनी इम्पॉर्टेंट हो सकती है किसी एक पर्सन की लाइफ में, खास करके चूँकि हमारा क्षेत्र जुड़ा हुआ है डिसेबल्ड पर्सन के लाइफ से, तो हम इस बात को यहाँ पर समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि एक डिसेबल्ड पर्सन या उनसे जुड़े हुए जो उनके पेरेंट्स या उनके फैमिली के लोग हो सकते हैं, उनकी काउंसलिंग किस तरह से अहम रोल अदा कर सकती है ऐसे डिसेबल्ड पर्सन की लाइफ को इम्प्रूव करने के लिए। हम एक बार फिर आपसे कहना चाहेंगे कि अगर आप हमारे एक्सपर्ट से कोई सलाह लेना चाहें तो आप हमसे कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। हमारे कांटेक्ट नंबर्स को नोट करें। हमारा टोल फ्री नंबर है 1800112008। हमारा फ़ोन नंबर 011-265-11613 और हमारा फैक्स नंबर 011-265-11609। डॉक्टर जीना, ब्रेक पर जाने से पहले हम इस बात पर चर्चा कर रहे थे कि कौन कौन से स्टेप्स हो सकते हैं किसी पर्सन की काउंसलिंग के लिए, तो इसके बारे में आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे?
काउंसलिंग में कौन सा स्टेप्स लेके चलेंगे डिपेंड करता है किस प्रकार का काउंसलिंग हम दे रहे हैं। लेकिन हम सारे प्रकार का काउंसलिंग को हम देखेंगे तो कुछ मेजर स्टेप्स के हम कह सकते हैं, ये स्टेप्स हम देख सकते हैं काउंसलिंग प्रोसेस में। एक तो इसमें हेल्पिंग पीपल, जैसे पहले हेल्पिंग फॉर्मुलेटिंग गोल्स एंड एक्सपेक्टेशंस, टीचिंग क्लाइंट्स हाउ टू गेट द मोस्ट फ्रॉम द काउंसलिंग एक्सपीरियंस, developing high degree of trust and favorable expectations for change. Helping, बहुत लोग मैंने जैसे बताया था कि हेल्प किसको चाहिए, बच्चा जो मेंटली हैंडीकैप्ड है उसको हेल्प चाहिए या पेरेंट को चाहिए?
यहाँ पर बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात आपने कह दी कि यहाँ पर हेल्प की जरूरत है किसी रियली शॉकिंग जो एक्सपीरियंस लगा है उस पेरेंट्स को, साथ साथ में कहीं न कहीं वो बच्चा जो इस प्रॉब्लम से सफ़र कर रहा है, तो या कहीं इन दोनों का एस्पेक्ट पर ही थोड़ा सा बच्चा ग्रोन अप हो जाएगा, उस सिचुएशन में कहीं न कहीं उसको भी कुछ काउंसलिंग और कुछ इस तरह की थेरेपी देने की ज़रूरत पड़ सकती है। तो ये टारगेट समझना हमारे लिए बहुत ज़्यादा महत्वपूर्ण है कि कौन हमारा टारगेट पर्सन होना चाहिए जिसको कि काउंसलिंग की रियली ज़रूरत है। जी,
जैसे बच्चे घर में काफ़ी शोर शराबा करते हैं, दे बिकम एग्रेसिव, हिट ईच अदर, मारपीट करते हैं, और पेरेंट्स उनको लेके आते हैं, भाई देखो मेरा मेंटली हैंडिकैप्ड बच्चा है, ये मारपीट करता रहता है, बड़ा एग्रेसिव है। ही इज एग्रेसिव नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ द फैक्ट दैट ही इज मेंटली हैंडिकैप्ड, बट बिकॉज ऑफ द वेरी फैक्ट दैट द फैमिली एनवायरनमेंट इज नॉट गुड. There is a family pathology.
Family environment is not supporting to that child. That's why he is expressing his views in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe that there is a family pathology. You know, there is a poor understanding between the parents.
Yeah.
They fight with each other, and the children used to imitate it. The problem is not with the child.
Okay.
The problem with the parents. So why the problem occurs, how it occurs, and who needs the help? That has to be determined by talking to the parents, by taking history. What happens yesterday? What happened? So sometimes children also talk about their parents. They say that, oh, कल मामा और पापा झगड़ा किए थे. Then you find that कल झगड़ा किए थे तो ये 2 दिन के बाद आ रहे हैं तो, और 1 दिन के बाद आ रहे हैं तो probably ये झगड़ा का ये असर हो सकता है. Then if you go and take history, sometimes the parents are neglecting because they feel that probably we cannot do much about this child. People keep watching televisions, people keep watching internet movies, films, they don't give attention to the child, and because of lack of attention the child goes astray, the child is not given proper guidance. तब ये होता है कि आपको देखना है कि how they what kind of parenting they give. Now people talk about quality parenting. ऐसे नहीं कि हम पेरेंट बन गए इसलिए हम जो कर रहे हैं वो पेरेंटल बिहेवियर है और पेरेंटिंग हम कर रहे हैं, सही ढंग से कर रहे हैं. हम ये पेरेंटिंग बिहेवियर अपना पेरेंट्स से सीखे हुए होंगे. Nobody has taught us, but there are parents who need to be taught how to give quality parenting, how to look into the psychology, the feelings of the children while working with them.
यहाँ पर डॉक्टर जीना मैं आपको 1 मिनट रोकना चाहूँगा। जैसे कि अगर हमें एक शर्ट भी खरीदनी होती है तो हम कई बार ये सलाह लेते हैं जो हमारा फैशन डिज़ाइनर फ्रेंड है, हम कौन सी फैब्रिक है, कैसा क्या है, इस बात को बहुत ज़्यादा समझने की कोशिश करते हैं। वहीं पर जहाँ पर कि एक हमारे पूरे बच्चे की लाइफ का सवाल होता है, हम सोचते हैं कि हम जो कर रहे हैं दैट्स ओके, ज़रा सा भी इस बात को न तो खुद समझने की कोशिश करते हैं और न तो कोई जो इस मामले के फील्ड में जो एक्सपर्ट है उसे ये सलाह लेने की कोशिश करते हैं कि कैसे हमको पेरेंटिंग करनी चाहिए। अब तो थोड़ा सा अवेयरनेस अपने शहरी क्षेत्रों में जरूर आया है, लेकिन अभी भी नॉर्मली अब देखें तो लोग एकदम सो ऑन जैसे वो चल रहा है, दैट्स ओके। या
और जो इंटेलिजेंट पेरेंट्स होते हैं
जी।
वो महसूस करते हैं कि हम कोई किसी के पास ये सलाह लेंगे तो ये चीज का हल हो सकता है। जैसे आप जाते हैं डॉक्टर के पास, जाते हैं एक एडवोकेट के पास टू सॉल्व योर प्रॉब्लम्स। Similarly, nowadays people visit the counselors to find out what problems we have and how we can overcome. And they understand their limitations. हर आदमी का लिमिटेशंस होता है। दोनों पेरेंट नौकरी कर रहे हैं, सुबह 10 बजे निकल जाते हैं, 5 बजे आते हैं। आया बच्चा को देख रहा है, मेंटली हैंडिकैप्ड चाइल्ड इज लुक्ड आफ्टर बाय द आया, the girl who stays at home. And number of behaviors he has picked from this ayah, and he has become aggressive. This is a situation where the parents need counseling as to how to handle this child. They cannot give much time because they cannot leave their services, they cannot lose their services. But whatever time they have, 1 hour, 2 hours in the evening, 3 hours in the evening, they should give quality parenting instead of sitting in front of the TV or watching some kind of activities, some kind of entertainment activities. So if पड़ोस इसी बात को कहते हैं कि भाई ऐसे मत करो, ऐसे करो, they don't accept. But when a qualified counselor talks to them, tells them, understands the individual, tries to understand the individual is now in a accepting mood, and he can accept the information, then he says that okay, you do this, and it becomes acceptable to the individual. Now we talk about how to formulate the problem. प्रॉब्लम जैसे जैसे हो रहा है, बच्चा रात में पेशाब कर देता है, वो बिस्तर पर पेशाब कर देता है, तो लोग कहते हैं वो डर से कर देता है, कोई कहता है सपना आता है इसलिए कर देता है। These are formulations, layman's formulation. We keep on formulating it. But behavioral analysis हम करना शुरू करेंगे तो हम कोशिश करेंगे देखने के लिए इससे पहले क्या हुआ था। आज क्या रात में पानी ज्यादा दिया गया था? आज क्या कोई घर में कोई स्ट्रेसफुल एनवायरनमेंट था जिसके वजह से रात में बच्चा पेशाब कर देता है? बिकॉज स्ट्रेस वी नो दैट इज वन ऑफ द मेजर डिटर्मिनेंट्स ऑफ चाइल्डहुड प्रॉब्लम्स। पेरेंट्स के बीच में फाइट हुआ है, घर में कोई दिक्कत आ रही है, the children are responding to that not by speaking but by showing this kind of responses. तो हमको ये समझना चाहिए कि this may be one of the causes. Not only we see the antecedent before this behavior occurs, what happened, but also what happened after the child spoils the bed, wets the bed. We try to see that the child doesn't feel very bad when he does this. The child has to be explained, the child has to be exposed through a systematic kind of behavioral counseling, behavioral intervention, so that he can overcome this problem. Now monitoring the antecedent events, monitoring the consequence events are important for us. An expert can understand what kind of management has to be done, and this cannot be done by the expert himself or herself. एक्सपर्ट वहां जाके बच्चे को हैंडल करना संभव नहीं है। पहले जब लोग कहते थे डॉक्टर पेशेंट रिलेशनशिप, डॉक्टर दवा देता है, पेशेंट ठीक हो जाता है, लेकिन इस एरिया में डॉक्टर दवा देने से जैसे मरीज ठीक हो जाता है, वो ऐसे बात नहीं है। इफ यू हैव टू चेंज द बिहेवियर ऑफ एन इंडिविजुअल, द चेंज हैज टू बी डन थ्रू मीडिएटर। हु आर द मीडिएटर? द पेरेंट्स आर द मीडिएटर, द टीचर्स आर द मीडिएटर हु यूज्ड टू हेल्प द चाइल्ड, हु यूज्ड टू use the techniques, the methods to overcome the difficulties. So the child gets benefited if these people are properly trained. So parental training program, parental counseling is very important to bring any change in the behavior of these children, these people. So we are talking about now a triadic model. 3 people are involved. One is the person who has a knowledge base, the expert. Second is the mediator who tries to give the help, and the one who receives, the child who receives this help, he is the third person. So this is a triadic model. So now we are coming away from the dyadic model which is being practiced in the medical sciences and medical field, and this is a very important issue. So what I precisely want to tell you is that one need to not only help the people but also try to formulate the problem from different angles so that a solution can be brought out easily. Apart from that, one has to teach the clients how to get most from the counseling experience, and also develop high degree of trust and favorable expectations for change. People do not change easily. People don't change easily because of the very fact that it has become a habit with them not to change. Certain behavior, they cling to certain behavior, they do not change. Now a change agent has to change people slowly by working with them, by understanding what are the difficulties and constraints for change. मान लीजिए हम एक घर में बच्चा को कैसे कंट्रोल करना है हम तरीका सिखा रहे हैं कि भाई जब पढ़ रहा है उसको रिइंफोर्स करो, और जब किसी के साथ कोई गलत व्यवहार कर रहा है उसको थोड़ा सा डांटो. ये तो हर आदमी कहता है, लेकिन जो काउंसलर होता है वो समझने के लिए कोशिश करता है मैं जो टेक्निक के बारे में कर रहा हूँ, इसको टेक्निकली कहते हैं कॉन्टिजेंसी मैनेजमेंट, ये क्या यहाँ पर सफल होगा, और सफल करने के लिए इस प्रोग्राम को हमको और क्या करना पड़ेगा. शुड आई गिव काउंसलिंग ओनली टू द पेरेंट्स? घर में बैठी हुई है ग्रैंड मदर डजंट लाइक एनी सच थिंग्स टू हैपन. शी डजंट अलाउ द बहू टू डू कंटिजेंसी मैनेजमेंट. इसे जो ऐसे ठीक हो जाएगा, आज ऐसे थोड़ा चंचल दिखाई दे रहा है,
पापा भी ऐसे करता था लेकिन बाद में सब ठीक हो गया.
So don't worry about this.
जी.
So now you need to have counseling program for the grandmother also, the mother of the child's mother. So grandmother need to be brought to that counseling alley to find out that whether she can be helpful in mediating, in helping. Sometimes grandmothers are also trained as to how to handle the reinforcement and punishes. Because when parents go out, grandmothers are the ones who manage the entire household.
जी.
So they have to be trained as to how to. बच्चा रो रहा है और उसको खाना दे दो ठीक हो जाएगा. रोने का मतलब नहीं है कि उसको खाना चाहिए. There may be many other things which the child requires. And sometimes even counselor need to learn from the counseling. Those who receive counseling, it doesn't mean that they do not know anything about the world. We shouldn't undermine, the counselors should not undermine the people who receive counseling. There are a lot of things to learn from them. The way a parent has understood about the sign language which is used by a deaf child cannot be understood in the same manner by a counselor, because counselor may not be having adequate training in that area. Secondly, these people being with the child learn a lot of skills, they learn a lot of signals which are given by the child, and they can also teach the counselor as to how to deal with the child. Getting cues from them, also they can take the help of the counselor, seasoned counselor, and that will be beneficial for them. So this is how we can go about counseling. That is why it is important to formulate the problem, why the problem is occurring, how it is occurring, and what are the determinants and constraints of the problem. What are the situations? There is a need of situational analysis in which the problem is occurring. Now there are some problems which occur in front of parents. Some children occur in front of teachers, and some problem occur when they are alone. A child shows head banging when there is nobody around, when he is alone, because he wants to stimulate himself. There is no toys in the house, light, very little light is there, very little sound is there, and the child tries to stimulate himself by engaging in some kind of stereotyped repetitive behaviors. No person is around. So this isolation, loneliness causes this behavior problem. Counselor has to understand this aspect of situational analysis. And there are situations where the behaviors are strengthened, are stabilized because of the very fact that there are some people who are around and who used to reinforce this behavior by giving them attention, by giving them some kind of reinforcement and encouraging these behaviors sometimes without their knowledge. The parents do not know that their attention has increased their attention seeking behavior. मुझको ये दे दो वो दे दो, बच्चा जब कहता है जैसे अरे वो चिल्ला रहा है ये कर रहा है उसको कुछ दे दो, कुछ देने के बाद उसका परिणाम क्या होता है पेरेंट्स इसके बारे में सोचते नहीं, क्योंकि इमीडिएटली बच्चा इन चीजों को लेने के बाद चुप हो जाता है, क्वाइट हो जाता है, एंड दैट गिव्स रिलीफ टू द पेरेंट. Parents are busy in their day-to-day life because the child is quiet.
उसकी मेन प्रॉब्लम जहाँ पर थी वो वहीं पर रह गई.
Exactly.
कुछ दूसरी चीज देकर के उसका माइंड एक थोड़ी देर के लिए डाइवर्ट कर दिया.
Right.
जी.
So it has a short-term gain,
जी.
but it doesn't have a long.
नहीं, शॉर्ट टर्म गेन तो होना ठीक है, लेकिन ये कहीं ना कहीं प्रॉब्लम को तो एज इट इज उसने छोड़ दिया. प्रॉब्लम तो फिर अराइज करनी है. जी.
So that is why counselor need to understand the long-term effect, make people understand the long-term effect of this particular behavior.
Yeah.
So what we call nowadays we are talking about applied behavior analysis, how it is to be applied with an individual child in an individual situation has to be explained to the individual. Motivation plays a very important role in counseling. What motive a behavior serves, one has to search it out and find out. No behavior can continue without a motive behind it. So fulfillment of a motive has to be seen very carefully. For instance, the child who is banging his head doesn't do this the day he is taken out. जैसे कि बाहर आप चले गए बच्चा को लेके, उस दिन वो हेड बैंगिंग नहीं कर रहा है, एंड दिस इज ए ग्रेट लर्निंग फॉर अस. वी नो दैट दिस इज नथिंग बट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस काइंड ऑफ lack of stimulation in the home setting, and if we take him away from time to time, this behavior will be lesser. So this aspect has to be dealt in a much broader way, broader manner when you deal with counseling. It is not only the understanding of the counselor, but it also requires understanding of the counselee regarding the situation in which the behavior is occurring. And sometimes the people who try to change the behavior, so-called change agents, need to be reinforced for the change that they make. Counselor is one who sits in a counseling chamber and gives counseling, but these people work in their home setting without any reinforcement. They are also human beings. Now there should be other people around, supportive agents, who should reinforce them, saying that well done, आज आपने बच्चा के साथ इतना समय दिया, देखो बच्चा का कितना इम्प्रूवमेंट हुआ, बच्चा का ये प्रॉब्लम जो था कितना कम हुआ. ये कहने के लिए कोई आदमी होना चाहिए, और ऐसे आदमी नहीं है तो कुछ लोगों को ऐसे बनाना चाहिए जो रिइंफोर्स करते रहेंगे, बताते रहेंगे, भाई देखो आप तो आजकल ये बच्चा बहुत अच्छा है. इट मे बी ए नेबर, इट मे बी ए फ्रेंड, इट मे बी एनीबडी. ओवर टेलीफोन आल्सो समबडी से हाउ इज दिस चाइल्ड डूइंग. पेरेंट्स से ओके ही इज डूइंग वेरी वेल, देन ही शुड से यस वेल डन, यू शुड हैव डन दिस अर्लियर आल्सो, आई लाइक दिस, वी लाइक दिस. सो दिस लाइकिंग, कन्वेइंग the reinforcing the parents, reinforcing the change agents has a great importance in counseling. So you see, now earlier we are talking about the counseling the individual who suffers. Now we are talking about the counseling of individuals along with the parents and caretakers who are around. Now we are talking about counseling the community who support not only child with disability but also the child, the individuals who are working around them, with them. So now there is a relevance of community counseling. A child, now we are talking about community counseling. A mentally retarded child who has got difficulty in purchasing things, mildly retarded child, can be supported by giving counseling to a shopkeeper who used to, shopkeeper, by training him how to help this child. When the child goes, how to exchange money, how the child can learn, he can facilitate that. This cannot be done in home setting. The child is going to buy a ticket, the person who is there in the counter has to be given counseling before the child comes there, giving changes, reinforcing the child, saying good boy or good girl. This has got a lot of role to play. So my point is that counselor need to reprogram the environment which has already been deprogrammed because of the disorder, disease or the problem that an individual faces. The moment a person comes to know that the child is disabled, the child is suffering from particular disorder, a label has already been given, autistic, learning disabled, mentally handicapped or anything like that, that changes the entire social environment. People start reacting to these children in a non-normal fashion, in an abnormal way, because they consider the child has difficulties. Now this entire deprogramming has to be corrected by doing some kind of behavioral engineering, some kind of changes at a very micro level, so that the best services can be offered to these people.
सर यहाँ पर एक क्वेश्चन थोड़ा सा है, जैसे आपने कहा कि जो आस पड़ोस के चाहे शॉपकीपर हैं और टिकट कहीं पर वो बच्चा खरीदने जा रहा है, तो इट्स अ वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू टीच ऑल दीज पर्सन्स एट अ टाइम. हम कैसे इस पूरी सोसाइटी में वन टाइम में इस तरह की अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करना, इट्स अ वेरी ह्यूज टास्क. हाउ कैन इट बी पॉसिबल?
ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल है आपका. हम दवा के लिए काफी पैसा खर्च करते हैं, आप जानते हो. जी जी. सर्जरी के लिए काफी पैसा खर्च करते हैं जी. एंड पीपल हु आर वर्किंग इन द शॉप्स, who are in the ticket counters, they can also be taken as change agents, can be paid some amount, maybe 10 rupees, 20 rupees or 40 rupees to act as a change agent instead of calling a doctor, because he doesn't have any medical problem. The problems are behavioral. We can train these people to facilitate some kind of behavior and establish certain kind of behaviors. So there is no harm in involving these people as mediators to improve the behavior of the child. So there is a paradigm shift. Earlier the counselor used to sit like this and give counseling. Now counselor has to go out of his cushion chair to see that how this can be mobilized, how the resources of other people can be mobilized to help these individuals with disabilities in a much better manner. Now the social responses are to be created by reinforcing the society, by mobilizing the society. You cannot expect the generalization will occur on its own. बच्चा को हम ट्रेनिंग कर देंगे और बच्चा जब कम्युनिटी को जाएगा अपने आप करता रहेगा, क्योंकि घर और कम्युनिटी दोनों अलग चीज होते हैं. घर में आप जितना सिखाए हैं, स्पेशल स्कूल में जितना आपने बच्चों को सिखाया, ऐसे देयर इज नो गारंटी दैट द चाइल्ड विल गो टू द कम्युनिटी एंड शो दोज बिहेवियर्स, एग्जिबिट दोज बिहेवियर्स इन द सेम मैनर ही इज डूइंग इन द क्लासरूम. इन द क्लासरूम ही इज सेइंग गुड मॉर्निंग, गुड इवनिंग, like that, isn't it? He's wishing people when people used to come, but when he goes to the community he doesn't do the same behavior because there are no support in the community, there is no reinforcement in the community. The community appears to be a situation which is quite strange for him because everybody looks at him like a stranger from their look.
यहाँ जो ये कम्युनिटी का व्यू है, एक स्ट्रेंजर, एक समवॉट डिफरेंट पर्सन की तरह से उसको देखना और डील करना, उसकी तरफ से कहीं ना कहीं ये सोशल एटीट्यूड चेंज होना बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है. एक चीज़, आप तो एक्सपर्ट हैं इस फील्ड के, मैं एक चीज़ ये कहना चाहूँगा कि जैसे कि चाहे होटल इंडस्ट्री हो, चाहे किसी अदर प्रोफेशन में जो लोग जा रहे हैं, कहीं ना कहीं अगर उनका सोशल इस तरह से इंटरेक्शन हो रहा है कॉमन पर्सन के साथ में, तो कहीं कहीं उनको इस बात का एक बेसिक ट्रेनिंग एक 1% के अकॉर्डिंग ये होना चाहिए कि अगर हमारे सामने इस तरह का पर्सन आ रहा है तो उसको किस तरह से टैकल किया जाना चाहिए, किस तरह से बताया जाना चाहिए, और उसकी फीलिंग्स को किस तरह से समझना और रिस्पेक्ट किया जाना चाहिए, जिससे उसमें जैसा आप कह रहे हैं कि बिहेवियरल इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम्स न आए. इस चीज को कहीं ना कहीं सोसाइटी को और ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा.
जैसे कि बहुत सारे लोग जानते हैं डिसेबिलिटी क्या होता है, डिसेबिलिटी के बारे में लोगों के पास नॉलेज कम नहीं है, बट द बिहेवियर विच इज रिक्वायर्ड टू बी एग्जिबिटेड दैट इज नॉट फाउंड. A shopkeeper may be knowing what disability is, maybe you can explain to him what disability is, but you have to ensure that he shows some kind of supportive behavior to improve the conditions of disabled people. अच्छा, आप कहेंगे कि भाई इनको सपोर्ट करो, they will give you money, but sometimes they don't give time for the disabled person because the disabled person doesn't approach them.
Money is not only the help,
Money is not the only help.
somewhere the behavior, the respect, जो चीज हमें उनकी तरफ दिखाना है, ये कहीं ना कहीं ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है. हम अपने ऑडियंस को इस चीज से थोड़ा सा हम ध्यान खींचना चाहेंगे आपका कि किसी की हेल्प करना केवल मनी देना ये केवल पूरे में अपने आप में हेल्प नहीं हो सकता है. हेल्प आपका दूसरे एंगल से भी हो सकता है कि आप कितने सपोर्टिव हैं, कितना उनकी प्रॉब्लम को उनके ढंग से समझने को तैयार हैं. यह भी अपने आप में हेल्प करने का एक बेहतर तरीका हो सकता है. इस फील्ड में और ज्यादा हम क्या डिस्कस कर सकते हैं उसको हम अपने अगले सेगमेंट में जारी रखेंगे. अभी हम ले रहे हैं एक छोटा सा ब्रेक.
आशा के पंखों पे we can and we will fly, we can and we will fly.
वेलकम बैक फ्रेंड्स। हम इस बात पर चर्चा कर रहे हैं कि काउंसलिंग किस तरह से डिसेबल्ड पर्सन की ज़िंदगी में कुछ परिवर्तन ला सकती है। यहाँ पर एक बार फिर चर्चा को आगे बढ़ाने के पहले मैं आपका ध्यान खींचना चाहूँगा कि अगर आप हमारे एक्सपर्ट से कोई सलाह लेना चाहें तो आप हमसे कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। हमारे नंबर नोट करें। हमारा टोल फ्री नंबर है 1800 हमारा फ़ोन नंबर 011-265-11613 और हमारा फैक्स नंबर 011-265-11609। डॉक्टर जेना, अभी हम इस बात पर डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि सोसाइटी में किस तरह से बिहेवियरल चेंजिंग की ज़रूरत है। इस तरह के लोगों के प्रति जो हमारा व्यवहार है वो किस तरह से परिवर्तित हो, क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं अगर हमारे इस तरह के सोच में परिवर्तन, हमारे व्यवहार में परिवर्तन उनकी जो प्रॉब्लम है उसको कहीं ना कहीं कम करता है, उसके प्रभाव को भी कम करता है। तो इस तरह के और कौन से जो वैल्यूएबल सजेशंस हैं जो कि दिए जा सकते हैं, और सबसे अहम बात इसमें ये कि इसको फार्मुलेट कैसे किया जाए, ग्राउंड पर इसको उतारा कैसे जाए, क्योंकि एक कॉमन सजेशन देना इट्स अ वेरी इजी थिंग, बट इट्स टू मेक इट अ ग्राउंड रियलिटी इट्स अ वेरी ह्यूज टास्क।
एग्जैक्टली। हम सोचते हैं कि अभी समय आ गया कि काउंसलिंग को हमारा काउंसलिंग रूम से बाहर लेना चाहिए। इट शुड गो अवे फ्रॉम out of the counseling room, counseling chamber to the society. In the community there are members who can support people with disabilities, and community resources are the biggest resources to help people with disability. If community accepts, nothing is like that. But acceptance doesn't come from here alone. Change of attitude, change of understanding is not sufficient. But this change of attitude should be reflected in terms of behaviors. And we need to know how to sustain these behaviors in the natural environment. Many behaviors occur in the natural environment but do not sustain. They perish, they extinguish on their own. आपने किसी को साहाय्य किया, कोई मदद किया, और this helping behavior doesn't continue because people don't support. People tell many things if you give support to the individuals.
यहाँ पर आपने एक बड़ी अच्छी बात कही कि सोच को कहीं न कहीं व्यवहार में परिवर्तित करने की ज़रूरत है। जैसा कि अभी हम डॉक्टर जेना से बात कर रहे थे ब्रेक के दौरान, तो डॉक्टर जेना ने कहा कि हम सभी जानते हैं कि सिगरेट नहीं पीनी चाहिए, वाइन नहीं पीनी चाहिए, लेकिन पीते सभी हैं। और यही एक डिफरेंस है हमारी सोच का हमारे व्यवहार में। हम जानते तो हैं उस चीज़ को होना क्या चाहिए, ये हमें पता है, बट लेकिन कुछ हमें उससे एक हासिल हो रहा है, पता नहीं कितना पॉजिटिव निगेटिव, लेकिन उसके बावजूद हम उसको गलत किए जा रहे हैं। और यही जो परिवर्तन है ये सबसे बड़ी
अहम चीज़ है, सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है। काफ़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है who come forward to help people with disabilities, but they do not have adequate publicity to say that okay they have done very nice job for the people with disability. कोई इंडिविजुअल्स होते हैं वो हेल्प करते हैं रिटायर्ड बच्चों को, हैंडिकैप्ड बच्चों को, लेकिन उनके लिए कोई रिइंफोर्समेंट इतना नहीं रहता है कि उस व्यवहार कंटिन्यू करें। समटाइम्स दिस काइंड ऑफ बिहेवियर्स इन्वॉल्व्स कॉस्ट ऑल्सो। कुछ उसके लिए फाइनेंशियल कॉस्ट होता है, और हम कभी कभी कहते हैं बिहेवियरल कॉस्ट। कमिंग टू ए पर्सन एंड हेल्पिंग इन्वॉल्व्स बिहेवियरल कॉस्ट। यू हैव टू कम फ्रॉम योर होम एंड हेल्प द इंडिविजुअल. So how to reduce this behavioral cost, how this help can be given in the doorstep, that also has to be thought of. Now the government should think about this. The agencies who extend services to people with disabilities should also think about it. It is not sufficient to send a child to a school for the mentally handicapped or to a rehabilitation center so that the child will be will be taken care of adequately. We need to involve the community to come forward to help people with disabilities. Now, if I go back to our previous discussion, I was talking about the steps. Diagnosis is a very important issue in counseling. आपको पता है डायग्नोसिस क्या है, शिनाख्त करना, आइडेंटिफाई करना और पता करना कि क्या प्रॉब्लम इस बच्चा का है, इस आदमी का है. डायग्नोसिस को ज़्यादा यूज करते हैं हम मेडिकल ये के हिसाब से कि वेदर इज सफरिंग फ्रॉम स्किज़ोफ्रेनिया, मेंटल रिटार्डेशन और फ्रॉम हियरिंग हैंडीकैप, दिस इज डायग्नोसिस. बट डायग्नोसिस का एक व्यापक अर्थ होता है कि टू अंडरस्टैंड द प्रॉब्लम इन अ बेटर वे. Where is the origin of the problem? Nowadays we are talking about behavioral diagnosis. What causes the behavior? Why this behavior occur for such a long time and doesn't extinguish, doesn't perish like any other behavior? हम बहुत चीज सीखते हैं, भूल जाते हैं. लेकिन ये कौन सा बिहेवियर है? हेड बैंगिंग ऐसे बिहेवियर है जो बच्चा भूल नहीं पाता है, बार बार करता है, उसको पेन भी होता है फिर भी हेड बैंगिंग करता है, सर पटकता है, खून निकलता है, फिर भी बच्चा इस व्यवहार को बार बार करता है. तो डायग्नोस्टिशियन, ए बिहेवियरल डायग्नोस्टिशियन, ए बिहेवियरल ओरिएंटेड काउंसलर विल ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इज सपोर्टिंग दिस बिहेवियर, जिसलिए वो पेन को भी खातिर नहीं करता है.
बेसिक कॉज बिहाइंड द एक्टिविटी.
आप देखे होंगे कुछ लोग अपना सेल्फ इंजुरियस बिहेवियर करते हैं, अपने को मारते हैं, पीटते हैं, कुछ रिचुअल्स है वो दिखाते हैं, बहुत लोग वो देख के उसका मजा लेते हैं, ताली बजाते हैं. ताली बजाना, मजा लेना और बस देखना, that itself is so much reinforcing that they forget that the body is getting injured. The injury का जो पेन है,
इंस्पायर होते हैं कि बहुत सारे लोग हमको देख रहे हैं, एक सेंटर ऑफ अट्रैक्शन में बना हुआ हूँ,
तो पेन है,
ये बात ही उनको अपना वो कष्ट अपने आप को देने के लिए काफी होती है.
एग्जैक्टली
जी.
पेन उनको जो मिलता है व्यवहार से बार बार करने के बाद जो पेन मिलता है, इससे प्लेजर कहीं ज्यादा मिलता है. इसलिए दैट प्लेजर रिमेन्स एज ए रेसिड्यू. द चाइल्ड रिमेम्बर्स द pleasure. That is why the behavior remains, continues. बच्चे को stimulation नहीं है, he starts getting stimulation from the this kind of behavior which are which are considered to be abnormal. So diagnosis का बहुत व्यापक अर्थ है. जैसे कि बच्चे के साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं, उसको फैमिली का डायग्नोसिस करना चाहिए. फैमिली में पैथोलॉजी क्या है, डिफिकल्टीज क्या है, क्यों हर चीज पेरेंट्स सुनते हैं, समझते हैं, लेकिन इम्प्लीमेंट कर नहीं पाते हैं. इनके पास पैसे का कमी नहीं है. कुछ पेरेंट्स होते हैं उनके पास समय का भी कमी नहीं है, लेकिन उनको लगता है करने से कुछ होगा क्या. तो करने से क्या होगा नहीं होगा इसके बारे में काउंसलर हैज नेवर स्पोकन टू देम. द काउंसलर हैज नेवर एक्सप्लेन्ड द साइकोपैथोलॉजी बिहाइंड दिस पर्टिकुलर टाइप ऑफ बिहेवियर. क्यों होता है, जैसे सेल्फ इंजरी मैंने बताया कि क्यों ये होता है. आपने बच्चा को इतना समय छोड़ के चले जाते हैं तो बच्चा को स्टिमुलेशन नहीं मिलता है, इसलिए उसको होता है. तो यू गिव हिम सम प्ले एक्टिविटीज इफ यू कैन नॉट बी देयर. ट्रेन योर आया टू गिव प्ले एक्टिविटीज बिकॉज ही इज अनपढ़ है, शी इज अनपढ़, नहीं कुछ पढ़ा नहीं है, उसको कोई अकल ही नहीं है, तो वो बच्चे को ऐसे ही छोड़ देता है और अपना काम करती रहती है. तो इस क्षेत्र में द पेरेंट शुड एक्ट एज ए काउंसलर, शुड बी ट्रेन टू एक्ट एज ए काउंसलर टू हेल्प दिस चाइल्ड, टू गिव सर्विसेज टू दिस चाइल्ड थ्रू समबडी एल्स. नाउ दिस लिंक जो कड़ी है काफी लंबा बन जाता है. So sometimes you need to counsel hundreds of people to see that one person gets benefited. The challenged person gets benefited. So this circle of support should be closer so that the child will get better benefits. So let us go to the next points that we are going to deal with. The next is exploring the client's world, including past and present functioning, understanding the cultural context of the client's experience, examining the underlying family and systematic factors that are both contributing to the problems and providing the family with potential resources. Understanding, इसके बारे में हमने पहले बात किया था. Understanding the entire situation. Understanding कहाँ से आती है? लोगों को देखते देखते understanding आती है, कभी कभी आती है, पढ़ने से understanding आती है. What are the theories which explain this behavior? So these understanding come from the books, from looking at people, how they behave, and by talking to people, how do you see this behavior? What is your understanding about this? So understanding sometimes comes from understanding of others, from books and from other sources. Now this understanding, knowledge base, is acquired by a counselor, and now the point is that he has to disseminate this knowledge base by giving proper demonstrations, by understanding how people act and react to such situations. काउंसलर का जो स्किल डिपेंड करता है how well he can train another individual to take his role. It is a question of disseminating information in such a manner that one takes over the role of a counselor to deliver some kind of services in the home setting. Because as I told you earlier, that counselor cannot serve the client directly. It is impossible to give all services to the client sitting in a room. Therefore, and he cannot be so mobile to look into the needs of 100 clients. Simply he can train them. Now for training, sometimes he brings these people together and trains. It becomes more economical. Parents training program is conducted to explain what are the things which determine children's behavior. Children, sometimes parents are categorized, parents are put in different groups to make them understand about different types of behavior. For instance, one group of children, parents come for a counseling program, all of them have problems with their own children pertaining to adaptive skills. Children are not able to brush their teeth, not able to walk, not able to talk. Another group of parents come with problems like hyperactivity, self-injurious behavior, so-called behavioral problems. So counseling people according to the disability or disorder of a particular kind becomes much easier than talking to a group who have got different kind of heterogeneous problems. Somebody talks about drinking problems, somebody talks about walking, somebody talks about some other social problems of their children.
Every person is unique, and their problems will also be unique.
Right.
Yeah.
So that uniqueness has to be respected.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to deal with the parents alone, because their problem is so unique that they cannot share with other people. Sharing is not possible, or they may not feel like sharing with other people in a group setting. So you go for an individual counseling. So should we go to the next issues? Then we are talking about examining the issues underlying the family problems and systematic factors which are involved and that are both contributing to the problems and providing family with potential resources. Families, although understand the problems, sometimes even if they have resources, they do not know how to utilize the resources. You have money, you have power, but you do not know how to utilize your money or power in a better way so that it will bring some improvement in yourself, in your behavior, in your pattern of living. So that the resources what you have, people do not know. Many parents are very patient in the sense they have a lot of patience to sit with the child, understand the child, to give help to the child, but patience alone doesn't help. They should have behavioral skills. When I talk about behavioral skills, I also talk about training people to enrich their behavioral skills. A person has patience, but the person doesn't know how to behave with the child in a particular manner, how to demonstrate so that demonstration will be effective. We demonstrate number of things to people. The way a normal child understands from demonstration, a mentally handicapped child will not be able to understand from that demonstration. The demonstration should be very crisp, very clear, and each step has to be demonstrated in such a manner so that the child will be able to pick up. We talk about task analysis, and many of you must be aware of task analysis. The complete task has to be broken into simple ones so that it will be teachable, it will be learnable, it should be easily acquired. Now this particular skill has to be taught to the parents, explaining them as to how to go about it and how to reinforce at each stage. So in behavioral counseling we talk about reinforcement, we talk about shaping, we talk about chaining. These are different procedures and different techniques that the parents can use in their day-to-day life. And once you make them understand the theoretical underpinnings of these techniques, they will never forget about this. So it is our important responsibility to make people aware about the knowledge bases which are available with the counselor and outside the counselor. Sometimes we talk about bibliotherapy. We ask them to go and read certain literature so that they can understand themselves better, understand the child better. Many parents are knowledgeable, but we do not respect their knowledge sometimes. Counselors sometimes do not look into their knowledge basis. So a seasoned counselor, good counselor, would respect the knowledge base. There are eminent people who have got children with retardation, children with other kind of handicaps. Parents are not retarded, the child is retarded. Parents has a lot of knowledge base. He may be a professor, may be an engineer, may be a doctor, or may be a scientist. he may be having an innovative way of looking at this problem. I have visited many institutions where the parents have done wonderful job for their children, developing new instruments to understand how hyperactive the child is, how to calibrate hyperactivity. That skill a counselor cannot have, because the person is an engineer. He has understood what kind of instruments this child requires. Edibles are prepared with a particular content, the vitamin content or nutritional content, and that cannot be understood by a counselor. So there are many skills which are required to be acquired from the people who receive counseling services.
Counselors should be very willing to accept the knowledge coming from the parents and the.
Counselor should be open to people. He should be able to learn from others' understanding. Then only counseling will be successful. If I just keep on talking to you and don't learn anything, don't accept anything from you, counseling process will break down. And that is the basic understanding, without saying that you understand me, I will understand you. So when counselor talks only, that understanding somewhere gets affected. As a result of which, there will be a dropout. And a seasoned counselor will be able to make out that where the individual is losing attention, where the individual is losing interest in this counseling process. So if a person is losing attention, losing interest, then he has to review his counseling process. He has to change the counseling process to see that the person remains in the counseling program. This is also another, because it is a natural.
ये वन साइडेड जहाँ पर होगा, सिर्फ काउंसलर उसको बता रहा है, जो क्लाइंट है उसके अंदर की कोई बात सामने आ ही नहीं पा रही है, तो कहीं ना कहीं वो बोरिंग और मोनोटोनस होने की पॉसिबिलिटी वहाँ पर ज्यादा हो जाती है, और ऐसी सिचुएशन में काउंसलिंग का हो सकता है कि वो रिजल्ट ना निकले जो कि निकलना चाहिए.
जैसे कोई आदमी आ रहा है, कोई गांव से आ रहा है, देहात से आ रहा है, और हम उसको बड़े बड़े चीज के बारे में कह रहे हैं कि स्टिमुलस कंट्रोल के बारे में बता रहे हैं, फिक्सेशन के बारे में बता रहे हैं, जार्गन यूज कर रहे हैं, which you can use with a literate one who has gone through this kind of literature. जस्ट उसको ओरिएंटेशन करने का जरूरत है. लेकिन इस आदमी को आपको समझाना चाहिए स्टिमुलस कंट्रोल क्या है. जैसे हम कहते हैं माया के बारे में आप जानते हैं, हाँ माया हमने पढ़ा. माया मतलब ये होता है ना, इन्फैचुएशन होता है, लोग कोई चीज में काफी इंटरेस्ट दिखाते हैं, so that becomes a maya, a kind of attachment, extraordinary attachment. तो in a technical jargon we say this is stimulus control. तो इस चीज कभी कभी हो जाता है बच्चों के साथ, और बच्चों का एक्चुअल दिक्कत क्या है हम नहीं देखते हैं. बच्चों को ज्यादा लाड प्यार कर देते हैं, माया हो जाता है, उसके साथ जुड़ाव इतना हो जाता है कि बच्चों के लिए क्या गलती हम कर रहे हैं वो हम समझ नहीं रहे हैं. जब बच्चा रो रहा है उसको खाना हम दे देते हैं, उसका जो इच्छा है उसको परिपूर्ण कर देते हैं. तब ऐसे बच्चा जब बिगड़ जाता है, इसके बारे में हम आम लैंग्वेज व्यवहार का इस्तेमाल करेंगे तो पेरेंट्स या ऐसे लोगों को इसमें बेनिफिट होगा. सो वन नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड द लेवल ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल. इंजीनियर नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड इन डिफरेंट वे. इफ यू गिव द मॉडल्स ऑफ मैकेनिकल मॉडल देके उनको समझाना कोशिश करेंगे, देन he will be much comfortable than if you talk about things in a very casual manner. तो ये एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट इशू है. हर कल्चर में डिसेबिलिटी को अलग अलग तरीका से देखा जाता है, अलग अलग एंगल से लोग देखते हैं. जैसे कि गांव में आप जाओ, ए पर्सन इज मेंटली रिटार्डेड, दो पीपल हैव नो प्रॉब्लम. समटाइम्स दे से दैट ही इज गोइंग टू द फील्ड सो देयर इज नो प्रॉब्लम. वो जाता है वहाँ पे जमीन में जाके देखता है, जो एनिमल्स है उनको देखता है, और शाम को वापस आ जाता है. ही इज नॉट एट ऑल ए प्रॉब्लम, और वो भी हैप्पी, इज वेरी हैप्पी. ही गोज टेक्स केयर ऑफ द कैटल एंड कम्स बैक. बट जहाँ पर शिक्षा का सवाल है, जहाँ पर कंपटीशन का सवाल है, दिस चाइल्ड बिकम्स ऑड मैन आउट, और वहाँ स्ट्रेस ज्यादा होता है. तो वहाँ पे रिहेबिलिटेशन प्रोग्राम जिस तरीका से होना चाहिए, और एक शहर में जहाँ पर बच्चा स्कूल में जा रहा है उसको जो रिहेबिलिटेशन होना है, इसमें काफी फर्क है. इस कल्चरल डिफरेंसेस को हमको समझना चाहिए. तो इफ ए पर्सन इज वेल रिहेबिलिटेटेड इन ए पर्टिकुलर सिचुएशन, दैट सिचुएशन कैन बी इम्प्रूव्ड अकॉर्डिंग टू द कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट. और यहाँ पर जो कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट है उसमें अलग तरीका का चीजों को आपको इस्तेमाल करना पड़ेगा, अलग तरीका की टेक्निक का यूज करना पड़ेगा, ताकि बच्चा वेल एडजस्टेड हो वहाँ पे इस सिचुएशन में. चाइल्ड शुड गेट प्रॉपर्ली रिहेबिलिटेटेड. These are the few issues which are to be addressed to. So when I talking about these issues, I also talk about expose to you the complexity of counseling. Counseling is a complex process. It's not an easy process. A counselor has to be sensitive enough to feel the pulse of the client, to feel where distraction is taking place, where the counseling program is getting a waste. मैं बहुत देर से एक आदमी के साथ बात कर रहा हूँ, oh, he is nodding his head, he is listening everything, but next day he comes back and say that, oh, this couldn't be possible because my parents didn't facilitate this, didn't support, these people didn't support, I had official work, I had this work, that work. So this, इस आदमी का motivation अलग है. He wants to get some certificate from the counselor in which the counselor writes that the person is suffering from disability. He doesn't want, good deal of counseling, long counseling to help the child. ये सर्टिफिकेट लेने से वो दिखाएगा कि वहाँ पे एडमिशन, स्कूल में एडमिशन अच्छी तरह हो सकता है और उसको कोई फाइनेंशियल बेनिफिट मिल सकता है. So these issues are very delicate issues which need to be very carefully understood when you give counseling, because the counselor is spending a lot of time, energy in focusing on certain problems. If it becomes waste, then partly we believe that this may be could be because of poor understanding of the counselor himself or herself. The blame goes to the counselor sometimes because the counselor couldn't feel the pulse of the individual, what he exactly wants. He has given he has created an illusion for the counselor, giving a different picture of the disability, the problem that he faces. He has not come for X, but he has come for Y. These are some of the delicate issues which we face in day-to-day counseling. There are many people come and go to the counselor just for the sake of talking. Just for the sake of talking. They have no belief that the child will change, behavior will change. Today he is with one counselor, tomorrow he goes to another counselor, and that gives a lot of satisfaction to the individual because people keep on listening and talking to them. This kind of opportunity he doesn't get anywhere else. And these people, they do not get any benefit, nor they become useful for their own children, their own people. A counselor should be able to detect this lack of motivation from the signals that he gets from these people while sitting and talking to them. So these are some of the important issues to be dealt in a counseling session. So let us go back to our previous slide where we have been talking about examining the underlying family and systematic factors that are both contributing to the problems and providing the family with potential resources. I said resources are there, but these resources are not properly utilized. So you need to find out the ways and means to identify the resources of these people. Next slide, we are talking about discussing the underlying issues and concerns. There are many issues which are underlying a problem, and these issues are to be identified, to be dealt adequately. Next is supporting and accepting the client as a person while selectively reinforcing those behaviors that are most fully functioning. Confronting inconsistencies in clients' thoughts, language and behavior. Challenging assumptions that are inappropriate, self-destructive or irrational. Uncovering hidden and unconscious motives behind action. These are very important issues. The unconscious motive could be something different, and what the person says may be completely different. In due course of time, counselor discovers what are the unconscious motives behind consulting a counselor. Sometimes what people say, what people believe, there is a lot of difference. There is no coordination, there is no correspondence between saying and doing. If you look at the children, sometimes they say one thing, they do something else. And nowadays, a lot of training programs are conducted in which children are taught how to have a correspondence between saying and doing. For instance, the child doesn't want to read and he doesn't concentrate. If he says, I am going to read this chapter, the counselor facilitates giving a book and saying that now you read. So you say fast, then read. So saying and doing occurs simultaneously. So there is a correspondence between this. Children suffering from conduct disorder say something, do something else. There is no correspondence in many cases. So this has to be trained to the children so that there will be very little gap between saying and doing. And this may happen with adults. This may happen with the parents, this may happen with the caretakers who work with this kind of people. This correspondence training is very important. So we'll go to the next slide, in which we have been talking about the encouraging clients to accept more responsibilities for their choices and actions, helping clients to develop more options for their lives, and to narrow their alternatives to those that are more suitable, providing constructive feedback, structuring opportunities for practicing new ways of acting and being, facilitating greater independence in the client so that counseling ends in the most effective, the most efficient period of time. Now, encouraging people has a great role to play. By giving a particular kind of services, sometimes this behavior get extincted. People lose interest in providing a particular type of services. In those
उनको टाइम
conditions,
टाइम कहीं न कहीं इनकरेज करते रहना ये बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है। यहाँ पर सबसे ज़्यादा इस बात की ज़रूरत होती है कि ये जो इनकरेजमेंट चाहे एक्सपर्ट के थ्रू मिल रही हो, चाहे जो पेरेंट्स हैं उनके थ्रू बच्चे को मिल रही हो, ये कहीं न कहीं आपका जो टारगेट है उस चीज़ को अचीव करने में आपकी बहुत बड़ी मदद करता है। क्योंकि जब तक बच्चे के अंदर में, जब तक पेरेंट्स के अंदर में उस चीज़ का एक कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं डेवलप होगा कि हम जो अचीव करने जा रहे हैं वो चीज़ हम कर सकते हैं इजीली, तब तक उस चीज़ को अचीव करना बहुत अपने आप में बिल्कुल मुश्किल हो जाता है। इस चर्चा को अभी हम यहीं पर रोक रहे हैं, एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेने के लिए, और बाद में इस चर्चा को जारी रखेंगे। वेलकम बैक फ्रेंड्स। हम इस बात पर चर्चा कर रहे थे अभी ब्रेक पर जाने से पहले कि क्या इनकरेजिंग पॉइंट जो होता है वो काउंसलिंग में अपने आप में बहुत ज़्यादा अहम रोल प्ले करता है, क्योंकि जब तक क्लाइंट को हम बार बार इनकरेज ना करते रहें तो वो टारगेट की तरफ आगे बढ़ने के लिए उतना मोटिवेट नहीं हो पाता है जितना कि इनकरेज करने के बाद में हो जाता है। इस चर्चा को हम आगे बढ़ाते हैं, लेकिन एक बार फिर हम अपने कार्यक्रम के अंत में आपको याद दिलाना चाहें कि अगर आप हमारे एक्सपर्ट से कोई सवाल पूछना चाहें तो आप हमसे डायरेक्टली कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं हमारे टोल फ्री नंबर 1800112008 पर, और हमारा फ़ोन नंबर 01126511613 और हमारा फैक्स नंबर 01126511609। डॉक्टर जी ना, अभी जैसे हमने इनकरेजिंग पॉइंट के बारे में बात किया था कि बार बार इस चीज़ के लिए इनकरेज करते रहना कि नहीं, यू कैन गेट इट, तुम इसको गेट कर सकते हो, इट्स वेरी इजी टू यू। तो ये चीज़ कैसे मोटिवेट करता है इस तरह के जो काउंसलिंग है स्पेशली, कैसे उनको ये आप एज एन एक्सपर्ट अगर कोई आता है आपके पास में तो आप इसको करते कैसे हैं?
काउंसलिंग में ये जो एनकरेजमेंट का जो बात है ये बहुत अहम है, बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है। जो काउंसली है, जो रिसीव कर रहा है इन्फॉर्मेशन, ही इज नॉट ए स्टैटिक रिसीवर। ऐसे नहीं कोई मशीन है जो आपसे रिसीव कर रहा है,
आपने कुछ फीडबैक कर दिया और कंटिन्यू फॉलो
जी,
करेगा। जी जी।
तो जो इन्फॉर्मेशन रिसीव करता है, इस इन्फॉर्मेशन को उसको ट्रांसफॉर्म करना है, ट्रांसड्यूस करना है। आपने कहा जी बच्चा के साथ आपको ऐसे करना चाहिए, उसको रिकॉर्डिंग से ऐसे करना चाहिए, इसके लिए ऐसे काम करना चाहिए। जब ये बच्चा के बारे में वो जानकारी लिया आपसे, बच्चा के साथ काम करना शुरू किया, ऐसे होता है कि काम करते करते सेम काम को बार बार करते करते आहिस्ता आहिस्ता जिसको कहते हैं एक्सटिंक्शन होता है, एक्सटिंक्शन वो क्रिया जो है वो एक्सटिंक्टेड हो जाता है, जिसको हम हिंदी में कहते हैं निर्वापन। काम करने का जो शैली है, काम करने का जो प्रवृत्ति है, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता वो कम हो जाता है। एक्सटिंक्शन जब हो जाता है वो फिर से वो काम करने के लिए पसंद नहीं करता है। देयरफॉर ही नीड्स और शी नीड्स, बीच बीच में उनको चाहिए एनकरेज करना। एनकरेजमेंट का मतलब ये होता है कि रिइंफोर्स करना, इन टेक्निकल टर्म्स कहना कि कैसे आपने किया और कैसे इसको और अच्छा कर सकते हैं, और इसको रिइंफोर्स करना कि आपने बहुत बढ़िया किया, इसको फिर से कंटिन्यू कीजिए। पर्टिकुलरली डिसेबिलिटी के क्षेत्र में, अक्षमता के क्षेत्र में हम देखते हैं कि जो चेंजेस हम लाना चाहते हैं ये चेंज जल्दी नहीं होता है। आम बच्चा के लिए जो चेंज हम कोशिश करते हैं, व्यवहार चेंज जो लाते हैं, वो बहुत जल्दी हो जाता है। यू से समथिंग द चाइल्ड विल डू, द चाइल्ड विल रेस्पॉन्ड टू यू। बट mentally handicapped child, autistic child or a hearing handicapped child cannot respond in the same manner as a normal individual does. So sustaining their effort by encouraging is a very important issue. Which में you can change the activities which is being given instead of asking them to repeat the same activities every day. कभी कभी इस वजह से बच्चे लोग एक पर्टिकुलर काम को कंटिन्यू नहीं कर पाते हैं। So you need to see that the people are reinforced, they change their activities, and there is some novelty in the activities. We talk a lot about the determinants of attention. What are the things which can sustain their attention in the behavior which they are exhibiting, the activities which they are doing? That is important to understand. जैसे हमने लास्ट स्लाइड हमने ये कहा कि the encouraging clients to accept more responsibilities for their choices is also a very important issue. Now, we encourage people to take options, to share the responsibilities, for their choices. They have to be responsible for what they are doing. They should share the responsibilities with others, and this is an art. This art has to be properly encouraged, properly supported. Secondly, we have said that helping client to develop more options for their lives and to narrow their alternatives to those that are more suitable. There are many options that a person can have. These options may not be suitable, but there are some options which are suitable that they should retain. They should look for all the options. Otherwise, they may face frustration, they may have difficulties in pursuing those options. We have also said that providing constructive feedback is important. Constructive feedback means what has happened after performing a particular act, particular behavior has to be properly communicated to the individual so that the individual can improve. Instead of saying that the work which you have performed is not good, you have to say what has gone wrong in this particular activity, how the activity can be improved. So what are the methods or ways or means to improve these activities, and that is called constructive feedback. Now, supposing a child is punished for not doing a particular kind of behavior, he is not given a very constructive feedback. He has to be given feedback in such a manner that he can improve his behavior, he can learn from his experiences and from his difficulties. Structuring opportunities is also another issue which we deal in our counseling, and we try to see that the situation is structured in such a manner that the individual benefits out of it. Let me give an example. A child who is not able to brush his teeth in the morning has to be given a supported environment. Supportive environment means he should be provided a right kind of brush on which he can have a good grip. He can hold the brush and do this particular activity.
He should entertain the work instead of कि उसको कहीं बोझ लगने लगे कि ये क्या हमारे लिए सामने आ गया, तो एंटरटेन करना कहीं पर उस चीज को
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल जैसे कि वो ब्रश पकड़ के जाना चाहिए उसको बेसिन वॉश बेसिन के पास, बट ही इज नॉट एबल टू रीच द वॉश बेसिन. इट शुड बी डिजाइन्ड इन सच ए मैनर दैट ही कैन परफॉर्म दिस एक्टिविटी, एंड दिस कैन बी परफॉर्म, दिस कैन बी डन प्रॉपर्ली ओनली बाय गिविंग सम काइंड ऑफ सपोर्ट. He may need some kind of support, physical support. He may need some kind of manual support to perform this activity. So that is what is meant by support. Support doesn't always mean emotional support. It may need physical support also. So one has to be supportive. The environment has to be supportive to carry out certain behaviors. So the environment doesn't provide support until unless we design the environment in that manner. So we say that the environment should be interactive. The environment should be prosthetic enough to sustain a behavior. If it is, for instance, a child who is banging his head, I was talking about head banging, if you have provided a padded room where even if he bangs his head nothing will happen, then that will be a supportive environment to reduce his head banging. जैसे कि बच्चा चल नहीं पा रहा है, सही ढंग से एक्टिविटी कर नहीं पा रहा है, गिरने का संभावना है, we should have a padded room, we should have a carpeted floor so that whenever the child falls, the child doesn't get hurt. Although these are not the core aspects of counseling, these are some of the subsidiary aspects of counseling. One has to advise the parents to maintain these cautions, these kind of supports for the child so that the child will be able to learn. And learning doesn't occur alone in isolation. Learning occurs in groups, with peers and with other people. When peers are there to watch the activity, they are around, when there are reinforcers around, when the activity gives some kind of results, the activity can be learned better than if it is learned in an isolated manner. So there should be some kind of physical, psychological, behavioral support to the activity. We talk about behavioral cost. If a behavior continues for a longer period of time, it involves cost. So because of this cost, the behavior declines, becomes weaker and finally it extinguishes. So this weakening of the behavior depends on how much reinforcement you are giving. If there is no reinforcement, the behavior will be weakened and ultimately it will perish. The behavioral oriented counselors nowadays look into this particular aspect to see that this behavior doesn't get extinguished. When a behavior is acquired in a natural environment, it has to go through a lot of changes. It has to sustain in the environment which is not always supportive. So it is a great challenge for the analyst, for the psychotherapist, or for the counselor to create a supportive environment for change. Because change doesn't occur with the individual alone, it has to have community support. We also spoke about other aspects like facilitating greater independence in the client so that counseling ends in the most efficient period of time. Now counseling has a set period. You cannot keep on giving counseling to an individual throughout his life. At one stage the counseling has to be terminated, has to end. A good counselor would plan counseling program in such a manner that it can be covered, the purpose is solved within few sessions. If you are good, if the counselor is good, he can achieve these purposes within a few sessions. If the counselor is just a naive one, is just learning how to counsel, it will take a lot of time and lot of money. It will involve a lot of behavioral cost. So this is the difference between experienced counselor and the counselor who is just entering into the field, or even a lay counselor who gives counseling just because he wants to help people. There are many people who come out from the society to help people. Their resources are also important. Their counseling skills are sometimes good. Some are natural counselors. They have not been trained, but they have got good patience to listen to people. There are people, religious leaders, there are people who have good patience to listen to people, and people used to listen to them. And even these people can be told how to look into certain problems which are a bit technical. They can be mobilized to come to the mainstream to help people who suffer from different kind of diseases, disorders, even disability. A teacher who has got no basic training in counseling can be taught how to do a good counseling so that they can be better help for the child who is suffering from disability. So we believe that counselors are made, they are prepared, they are equipped by proper training. So this is one of the messages that I should give. And anybody can be a good counselor provided he has an interest, he does the skill well, and he has a focus on, he has an interest in helping people. Let us go to the next slide. Here we are talking about the stages. Following are the stages. One is, number one is establishing relationship. Relationship is considered to be one of the core issues in counseling. Developing relationship with people who lead to a troubled life, or those who would help such people to overcome their problems. Human relationship, that is bonding, helps in understanding and problem solving. Now we always know that human beings are social animals. They need social environment to grow, to support each other, and counseling is a process that facilitates when people talk to each other. They have to have some kind of basic relationship, fundamental relationship, establish a relationship which will be sustaining. And this relationship need to be defined. It cannot go on for the entire life. The relationship is a professional relationship which sustains during the period of counseling and shouldn't continue beyond that. And this has to be discouraged because of the very fact that a counselor cannot be at your feet, at an individual's feet, to offer counseling throughout their lifetime. There is a limit to this, and sometimes while counseling people, the relationship grows to such an extent that even the counselor fails to disentangle himself, detach himself from the counseling. And this kind of situation creates a very peculiar problem in the individual because of the very fact that he becomes dependent on the counselor, and this dependency continues for a very longer period of time. So you need to know, the counselor need to know where to start a relationship and to what extent the relationship should continue, and what should be the depth of relationship. So this kind of what is called a rapport. This is one of the important aspect of counseling. Now let us go to the next point in the slide. Now we are talking about the assessment of clients' problems, goal setting, intervention strategies, termination and follow-up. Client's problem has to be assessed, as I told you. It has to be properly diagnosed, and it has to be properly understood before you give any kind of counseling. Now during counseling phase, people are taught how to use techniques, methods, intervention programs, and how to support these programs by extending their own resources so that it will continue in a natural environment. Now, we have to have a time when the counseling process has to be terminated. This is a very crucial point where the counselor has to be very careful, because sometimes it so happens that after the counseling session is over, people keep on calling the counselor saying that I have done this, done that, and still they want to remain in the counseling interaction, counseling relationship, but which is a contraindication for effective counseling. It means the person has not been competent enough to support his own behavior of others. He has not learned much from the counseling process, therefore he is still dependent on the counselor. It may be considered as one of the failures in counseling process if a person keeps on remaining dependent on the counselor for a longer period of time than what is desired. And finally, one has to have follow-up, to call people. One need to call the people from time to time to see what is the progress of the individual, of the child from time to time. And this progress assessment can help a counselor to find out new goals, new strategies, to look into other problems of the individual. Or maybe that there are some counseling programs in which the program becomes unsuccessful because of other reasons. In that case, the counseling process, counseling approach has to be changed, has to be modified to look into the special requirement of the individual. For instance, I take a autistic child and try to teach how not to rock his body and explain to the parents did it. Now this problem is not there. There may be another problem which may be tackled. So one after another, the goals have to be clearly explained, clearly identified, so that the counseling process will continue. And in some cases with multiple disabilities, such counseling process would continue for a longer period of time. This doesn't indicate dependency, this indicates that we have shifted from one goal to the other. And some goals are difficult to achieve, so we break these goals into smaller ones so that it will be achievable in short period of time. The time span during which the goal can be achieved, that should be spread out to the parents. If it takes longer time, the parents should know that it will take longer period of time, and they should have sufficient patience to handle this problem.
They should be mentally prepared.
They should be exactly mentally prepared to take that much of time to deal with this child, and so that they will not feel that they are overburdened by the counselor. So this is also a very important issue. Now the issue of generalization is also important. What we teach, what we learn may be successful in the intended environment. बच्चा को हम सिखा रहे हैं how to eat food, how to take care of himself or herself, how to brush, how to polish shoes, his own shoes, how to button shirt. He does it, but when he goes to another person's house, he feels quite awkward there and he doesn't do it. So many other issues like stranger anxiety, the anxiety which is caused by new place, new person and other things, that may affect this performance. There should be a planned generalization. Generalization doesn't occur on its own. If we have taught something very well, we shouldn't expect that this behavior will be performed in a natural environment in the same way we have trained. In a natural environment, the behavior may change drastically, as it happens in this case. So the environment has to be planned in such a manner that the child will have no difficulty in performing these behaviors. For instance, if parents are there, the child performs this behavior. If there is a simulation, the child learns the behavior. There are many mentally handicapped children whom we teach how to use toilet. The kind of toilet they use in the home setting and the toilet which we are using in a counseling setting are different. So generalization is poor. These aspects are to be carefully taken care of, should be carefully observed, and perhaps a simulation will be helpful for this child. Perhaps we may use a toilet which is the one which is used in home setting, so that there will be better generalization. These are the few things which has to be carefully understood while conducting counseling programs. Now we'll go to the next slide, in which we have been talking about other aspects of counseling. Those are the approaches. As I told you earlier, there are different approaches. One approach is your psychoanalytic approach. Psychoanalytic approach is a depth-oriented approach. The counselor looks into the dynamics of the individual behavior. He tries to understand the unconscious motives behind a behavior. There may be conflicts at an unconscious level which we may not be able to understand at a superficial level. So it gives a lot of time to understand the unconscious conflicts that may occur at different developmental stages of the individual. A mother who is reacting very badly to a child's behavior may be having a lot of stressful experience in his personal life, and he has never gone to a counselor earlier, right, other than this situation. This is the first situation when he is coming across a person who tries to understand her, understand the problems. Now, until unless she gets rid of her own fixations, he cannot concentrate on the child. So a lot of focus has to be done, has to be made on the regarding the understanding of the individual, her personal fixations in the early stage of life. The time has to be spent in helping her to cathect. The catharsis has to be facilitated. Catharsis occurs by speaking, by communicating, by engaging in creative activities, by drawing, painting, a number of activities. If that is facilitated, sometimes fixations get over, a person becomes much better. Now we are talking about the mental hygiene. So that is also another important aspect of counseling. Behavioral counseling is also important, where we look into the environmental causes of a behavior and try to manipulate those environmental causes so that the person can improve, can show better behaviors in that setting. We also talk about client-centered approach, where humanistic and existential approach, where we try to understand the individual as a human being. We respect the individual, we give a full respect to the individual so that the individual will have a scope for understanding himself or herself. When the self-understanding develops, the individual becomes a better individual to care others and take care of himself or herself. These are different approaches to counseling, and depending on the expertise of the counselor, these approaches are to be utilized. The client-centered therapist used to say, counselors used to say that the individual perhaps has not been able to look at himself as he is. Looking at oneself is not just looking at one's physical features, but one's own psychological resources, one's psychological makeup, what he can do, what he cannot do. So one has to be honest to oneself. This kind of feeling, this kind of thinking develops in the individual, and he becomes honest to himself and becomes prepared to provide services. When these people engage in this kind of behavior, they learn themselves better, so that becomes easier for them to help other people. Now, a lot of research is conducted. Another aspect of counseling is conducting research. Database research has been conducted to find out which type of counseling is effective with which kind of disorders. Database means the behavior has to be studied quantitatively and qualitatively to understand if the behavior at all changes. We have number of experimental designs and quasi-experimental designs to understand whether a particular type of counseling is effective or not. People talk about ABA design. In ABA design, we try to, I am giving just one example of this design. So we try to understand how a person behaves before treatment, during treatment and after treatment, so that we can find out whether the behavior change really takes place or not. We don't believe on people nodding their heads and saying that okay, the child has improved. We need to see whether the child has really improved by assessing the behavior of the child. This is very important in counseling, because counseling has become a scientific discipline now, and any science should have proper assessment programs. Science should have facts to prove or disprove. Hypotheses are formulated regarding the procedure that one follows, and they are approved, they are examined, and to see whether they are really they fulfill the requirements or not. They are proved or disproved by exposing the individual to such counseling programs. And these are few things which are important in the counseling process, which should be maintained in all kind of counseling.
यहाँ पर जो आपने एक चीज़ बताई, ये बहुत ज़्यादा कहीं ना कहीं इम्पोर्टेंट हो सकती है कि बी ऑनेस्ट योर सेल्फ, चाहे ये काउंसलर के लिए ही हो चाहे काउंसलिंग के लिए हो, दोनों पॉइंट पर ये बात बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो सकती है कि हम अपने आप को पहचानें, जो हमारे अंदर में क्वालिटी है, हमारी अपनी बिहेवियरल जो अप्रोचेज़ हैं, अपने साइकोलॉजिकल जो अप्रोचेज़ हैं, ये जो अप्रोचेज़ हैं अपने आप से ईमानदार होना, ये कहीं ना कहीं हमारा जो टारगेट है उस चीज़ को अचीव करने में हमारी मदद कर सकता है। इस टॉपिक पर अपनी एक्सपर्ट नॉलेज के साथ में आपने जो अपना समय दिया उसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपको। दोस्तों, अभी इसके साथ में हम आपसे विदा लेते हैं और एक बार फिर एक नए सब्जेक्ट के साथ आपसे मिलेंगे। तब तक के लिए नमस्कार।